onto your butts.
Right there to our immediate left, we have all the folks gathering at the annual Saxon concert.
You've got people who really are into the occult and into Satan. They're propagating Satan, and I think it's a devastating thing.
It calms me down.
What's your favorite total metal video?
Zuckerberg and Gates and Buffett, amateurs can fucking suck it, fuck their wives, drink their blood. Come on, Jeff, get up!
Who'd win in a wrestling match, Lemmy or God? Lemmy. God.
Wrong, dickhead. Trick question. Lemmy is God.
Such a fine line between stupid and clever.
And we're gonna be at the Wilson Theater tonight with Slayer. You're gonna be there too, right? Oh!
Well, welcome to Somewhere in Time Podcast, everybody. SomewhereInTimePodcast.com is where you go to find all of our stuff online, all of our episodes streaming there, links to our social media, Facebook, Twitter, what am I forgetting? Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff.
YouTube, all the social stuff.
That's right. So go there and find our stuff, SomewhereInTimePodcast.com. This episode is a special episode. We are going to be joined by the author of this book. I have it right here. It is called Metallica, the $24.95 book. So I'll go ahead and introduce him now. Mr. Ben Apatoff. Say hello.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So we've got Ben here, but I should mention we're without two members that we normally have on the podcast. So, but I am Eric as always, and we've got Tim here.
Hello. And Keith and Joe are not here.
Keith and Joe are not on this episode, but that's okay.
Day off.
Yeah, they took this one off. So, but yeah, so welcome, Ben. I guess the first thing we should talk about a little bit is just how we came about your work. We have a mutual friend.
That's right, Kevin. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Kyle.
Kevin and Kyle.
Kevin and Kyle. Yeah, Kevin and Kyle.
Oh, wait, Kevin Ford?
Oh yeah, Kevin Ford.
Okay.
And then, well, actually, I know Kevin through Kyle, but I guess I mostly know Kyle through.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
Kyle is my Beavis and Butthead, Bill and Ted, Calvin and Hobbes, Wayne and Garth. You know, a long time. I mean, the book is dedicated to him. He's an old friend of mine for sure. Yeah.
Yep. So obviously, and Kevin is our brother. If people don't know that, Kevin Ford. But yeah, so I think we've had often we're talking to you online about Metallica, and it comes up pretty often. And you reached out to us about this book, and I know Tim actually helped with some of the pictures in this book, which is really cool. So
yeah, that was great. It was a real pain to get pictures because you have to buy them from Getty and go through a lot of different processes, and it made it a lot easier just to get people who are ready to just give me their own pictures. So that was really helpful.
I'm just flipping through right now to find. I know you've got. Let's see. There's the one from Monsters of Rock of James, which is an interesting story behind that.
Yeah, that's not technically my photo, but I have the picture.
It's your photo. Yeah.
It's my photo. Basically, it's my photo.
Yeah.
It's just a weird. Yeah, we don't have to get into it, but it's the way I tamed it's kind of weird. But
there was some backstage ones too, right? From the
from we met them on the.
Yeah, I think they're the same ones that are in the Justice box set, right?
Yeah, they're actually I think a couple of them they didn't actually use in the box set, so they're slightly different. Yeah, because I submitted quite a few. Metallica used like 3 of them, and then Ben used more of them. So
I used a few of them, and then I've seen them pop up on social media too, where it's like look at old videos of Damage Justice. I'm like, I know those guys.
I know. I know there was one on Instagram, and they're like, "Here's Kirk Hammett." I'm like, "That's Kirk, but that's also me."
Yeah, right. That's wild.
So weird. Yeah.
You got pissed, and they didn't say "and Tim Ford." Everyone should know who Tim Ford is.
Yeah, right. Come on.
How was that? How was me and Kirk?
It was really cool. He was, of the 4 of them, probably the quietest. He didn't have a lot to say.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, he didn't really say much.
This is still 89. Pretty early in their career. I mean, ultimately, when you think about it. I mean, 89.
Yeah, the first person who walked in was actually James.
Oh wow!
And it was weird because it was me and my brother Steven, and we were just standing like these were just. We have a cousin-in-law who works in the record distribution industry. And he had somehow gotten these tickets and backstage passes. So the people back there were, I guess, just like probably in the same boat, like they knew somebody who knew somebody kind of thing.
Right.
So we're just sort of standing around like, okay, I guess they're coming in. And James like walks right up to me and Steven like first.
Oh, wow.
We're like, oh. He's like,
Yeah, right.
he's like, what's up, man? And we're like, hey, you're James Hetfield.
Yeah, boy.
And
starstruck.
Yeah, but they had just lost Jethro Tull. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, sorry about the Grammys. That sucks. He's like, hey, man, we got to play. We got to play for millions of people, man. And then he's like, that was the big win. So. Like,
yeah, that's a great performance too. That's
it's awesome.
One of the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found some pretty obscure interview for the book on like a Canada interview where they're interviewing after the show and something like oh yeah, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and he goes, no, it's all forward after this.
Oh yeah,
pretty like unfazed by that. Just
yeah, I remember that. That was that guy from it was some Canadian guy.
I think it was Much Music or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, and I remember he asked James those questions. James was like, he's like, what is the criteria for the selections? And James was like, I thought AC/DC was going to win. He's like,
yeah, right.
Like, that's not the answer he's looking for, but okay. Yeah. What is the criteria for the selections? Like, how would James know that?
Yeah, really.
The criteria is these are, they don't know. Like, he's not going to know. Like, what is the Academy? How'd they pick these bands? Like, he doesn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
but yeah, he was, and then Lars, of course, back then, he was super cool. He was Lars. I mean, when we met him, he was so cool. Yeah,
it's like talking to journalists. You really hear a lot of flattering stuff about Lars because he talks, because he, like they're like nice guys, but like they want to do their own things. But like Lars is really into talking to fans, talking to journalists. So I think people love like how successful he is, and just. I haven't met any of them, but just talking to journalists where people like complain about Lars, I'm like, no, you don't understand. Lars is great. And like,
well, that's that's what kind of drives me crazy is people bash Lars so much, and I get it. I get why they do, and but at the same time, I've witnessed it. I met Lars, and I've heard stories from Tim and other people, and I'm in the fan club, and there's a local chapter of the fan club, and they've met Lars multiple times, and every time, I've not heard a bad story about Lars like being a dick or something, not at a fan perspective anyway, never. And his memory for things is remarkable. Like just he'll meet someone that's with the local Virginia chapter of the Metallica fan club and be like, oh yeah, I met you back in 2003 and I was behind at the Meriwether Post, or like, what? Okay. Yeah, you did, but how do you remember that?
They need him,
Yeah, they wouldn't be anywhere. They wouldn't be as big as they are now without him.
Oh yeah. Period. We're all like, a bunch of kids, on tour in Europe who didn't know where the next, meal was coming from, or the next hotel room was, and Lars had that all worked out. And if you look at like in some of the stuff in the box set, he'd be like writing letters to the record label people. He's got like a really astute sense of business and just like, no, we need this, and like our best market is here. And he's like, he's so focused. And it's
yeah. And even one of the, if we're trying to focus on the Black Album, one of the things that they mentioned in one of the interviews that Tim pulled with Bob Rock, was talking about the lead single for the Black Album and how everyone else was saying, oh, it needs to be Holier Than Thou, and they were like, that should even be the opening track, and Lars was like, no, what are you guys doing? You don't get it. Like you don't get it. Sandman, how do you not know that? Like, right. Just he knows from a marketing perspective, like he's the drummer and he has a bar marketing perspective than the people who are marketing him.
He's like the coach and the player at the same time.
Exactly.
I wrote a little of my book. I wrote about how he's I feel when people complain about his drumming, it's a little bit like when people say like, oh, David Lee Roth's not a good singer, or oh, Kurt Cobain's a good guitarist. It's like, you know what, like, he doesn't have like the technical chops of someone who went to like the best music schools, but I think that he's got a lot of flavor, a lot of personality. He's very song driven. He really it's like having a song inside the song where his drumming is so kind of like air drum worthy that he really adds a lot to it and complements it well.
And you said it in the book. You're like, how many drummers heard him doing what he's doing and thought, because I did this, they thought, well, I could probably do that, because it's not it's not easy, but it's also not impossible.
Right. It's attainable.
They still Oh, you were saying?
I just said it's attainable. It's something you can actually like. From the Bell Tolls, you're like, I could probably figure that out.
I think that's a big part of their appeal, is they have that kind of like DIY flavor. It's like, you look at like before that, before Metallica, almost all the biggest metal bands, they wore costumes. Just about all of them were English, and just like Metallica, like an accessibility there's a quote in the Master of Puppets book that they released a few years ago, where a guy who actually grew up to be Andrew WK's guitar player, Jimmy Coop, was like, we looked at these pictures and we were like, these are our friends. We were saw them laugh, we saw them, and it felt like this is something we could do because they dressed like us, they talked like us, and they dressed more like their fans than like big bands, and that was such an important thing in like inspiring us to make music.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and the other thing about Lars is he has this. You mentioned the songwriting piece of it, and he's got this mind for arrangement that like. I'm not saying he's Brian Wilson by any stretch, because Brian Wilson was some other level genius. But he's got that same kind of mind where he hears the song like practically, he can take the 1,500 riffs that he's given and piece together this song somehow, which is like that's another skill that he has. It's okay, like you said, to your point, he's not the greatest technical drummer in the world, but the contributions he makes to Metallica make it so that Metallica wouldn't be who they are without him, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And, honestly, I undervalued his songwriting contributions before the book. And I remember thinking like, James is like the artist and Lars is the businessman and stuff. And then like reading more of their interviews and stuff like that, it's like, Lars writes like riff motifs. He, picks out solos from Kirk. He really is a big part of their creative process in a way that I had not considered before. And,
if you watch any of those, I know we're kind of shifting to the newer albums, but if you watch any of those making ofs, it's him and Greg Fiddleman or him and Bob Rock at the control booth and in the studio with Kirk, like, working with the solos. Like you said, he is so, elbow deep in that stuff all the time that, it wouldn't be the same without him.
Eats it, breathes it, sleeps it. Jason Newsted, who's like one of the biggest Metallica fans ever, is like, I'm shocked at how big like Lars is into it. Like Lars is just like I don't think he has like life outside of it. He really just like lives for Metallica, and it's that's apparent. And I think that his songwriting contributions, his musicianship. James has a good quote too along the lines of someone said like, do you think Lars is not a good drummer? He's like, he'll admit that, but I'm not a great singer, and something happens when we work together,
Right.
Like they're better singers, better drummers, but like we have
I think even Lars said, I'm not the best drummer, but I'm the best drummer for James Hetfield's riffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And who else says something about is in the when Flea was inducting them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he said something along the lines of like, you can get all the best musicians in the world in the room together, and it will not make what Metallica does. And just like you get people with that chemistry, and they have an undeniable chemistry, and that's part of what's so magnetic about them, what's so likable about Metallica.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
So I want to ask a little bit about the book, and I was trying to find just before we came online here. Is this your first official book, or do you have other books out there?
Yeah, I've self-published stuff in the past. I've uploaded stuff to like ebook stuff. But this is my first like official book that's in bookstores that you can get in like Barnes and Noble. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, I feel like I've had like No Life Till Leather type stuff, but this is my kill 'em all. This is my like.
There you go.
Yeah.
I've seen like Revolver Mag like quoting you. Here
wow! That's amazing.
I've seen just certain little news outlets like in Ben Apatoff's book, and I'm like, what was his name? Like that's pretty cool.
It's weird. This is the first book I've had. I mean, it's pretty much my first book, but it's also the first thing I've had where people like the strangers are like approaching me about stuff that I wrote, and I'm like, I got to answer questions about that, and it's been kind of wild. But
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, you write a book about one of the biggest bands in the world. That's going to happen, probably, right?
Yeah. I that's part of the pitch too. It's like if it's Metallica, people are going to buy it. It's like very, it's really just because they're so huge. It's just they connect to so many people.
Yeah. They almost seem larger now than they ever have been. It's really kind of weird. Like stuff's like even more valuable and things cost more. And it's like, man, in the past 10 years or so, it seems like things just really blew up. I don't know why, but...
I think there are a few things. I was at a party last night, and this girl was like, hey, dude, I got to give you to my cousin who's 16 years old and he loves Metallica. And I'm just like, that's there are other bands from our era and our youth who had just have, like strictly like our thing. Like if you're born then, if you're at that time, then they're your band.
Yeah.
But Metallica's transcended that, and it's very like
it's amazing.
It's and like I'm a teacher. I get students who wear Metallica stuff, and they might not. I don't talk to them about it, but they might not know the songs, know the bands, but they like love what it stands for, and they're like. The same way that like I'd go to school with kids who have like Elvis shirts. They might not necessarily like know the music, but they'd be like, "This means something." And like the kids are like, this represents like politics and rebellion and like adolescence, and like people love the kind of like Metallica's so culturally huge now that I think people love it for something that's not necessarily the music, but like they just like. And like authentically, like like this is for me. This is Metallica. This is great. But they've kind of transcended that at this stage, which is kind of fascinating to watch.
Yeah, that is. And the reading your book, I could tell like we're basically obsessive fans. I mean, we love knowing all there is to know about this band. And I was like, this guy is kind of like us. Like he has all this like knowledge where you're like, okay, like when I was like 15. People were annoyed at how much I like Metallica. Like they were like, "You probably know when James Hetfield takes a shit, dude." And it's like, I'm like, hey, but I didn't stop loving them because of that. I just kept digging deeper and deeper into the stuff. Right. So like, it felt like that reading your book. I'm like, this is cool because this guy knows all the stuff that usually people are like, "How do you know that stuff, man? That's weird. Do you know that?" I'm like, this is cool. Yeah,
I mean, that's part of their appeal is that they're inexhaustible. They're very like they're a permanent puzzle, it's like if you figure it out, then it's over, right? Just like, okay, I figured this out. But it's Metallica, I mean, I'm sorry for being a nerd because I'm an English major and teacher, but like, I think the stuff that people stick to is the stuff that's like permanently confusing. It's like intriguing enough, but also people like keep going back to Moby Dick or Ulysses because it's like, it's so complicated, but like you keep exploring this, and Metallica's like that. They give you so much room to explore and so many unanswerable questions. And James has said that before. He's like, I'm more concerned with like exploring the question than finding the answer. And I think that's part of why they're such a likable band and why they feel like your personal bands.
Yeah, exactly.
Around the world like them.
Yeah, and I also liked in the book. I mean, I'm not done with it yet, but you don't do the thing where it's like, well, they were good until like 91, and after that I just like I'm like, well,
right.
That was refreshing to see. Like he understands like there's more to Metallica than just Master of Puppets.
Oh yeah,
there's more sides and there's nuance and there's they're a band who take risks, and the risks sometimes pay off, sometimes they don't. But it was cool to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, but that's important that they take risks, and that and I read how you want both. Like I love knowing that like Slayer, AC/DC will make the same record, and it's always going to be always going to be stellar. And I like that knowing that Metallica is going to make this a different record, and it's always going to be different. And I like having my reliable bands and my different bands. But one thing I think about often is I went to the Author in My Hands day. The Author in My Hands has that day of action where you get to work at a food bank and like win Metallica stuff. And I remember like this college kid that was like, "Dude, you saw the Death Magnetic tour. What was that like?" And he was just like, "That's my favorite record." And I was a little, like more than Master Puppets or Justice. And he's like, "Yeah, like that's the classics, but like this is like made me who I am. This is like this speaks to me. It made me want to play drums. It made me like And people who are 15 now hear the stuff differently, and like they're just like I think about the world and all the stuff going on, like hardwired is what speaks to me. And it's
it's great. I mean we were talking about this recently. I've had friends. I've been in bands with people who are like 10 or 15 years younger than I am, and their favorite album might be Load. Because they were 16 when Load came out, and that changed my life. Like that was the best album. That's the first time I heard Metallica. So that goes back to like the introduction to the band that always holds something some more special in your heart. Like that's that's always something when you hear that the first time. It's always it
comes up.
Yeah, it can be.
That comes up a lot on our show all the time. That comes up because we talk about just random albums, random bands. We're celebrating these 30 years, and this comes up all the time where it's like, well, my first Iron Maiden album was this, and so I like Paul Di'Anno the best, or
Oh yeah.
I don't like the stuff after this. It's this crazy thing where it's like this. Your gateway in was such a huge part of your life that
it is.
It's undeniable. You're like, well, this was where I started, and I can't. It just made such an impact on me.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's I've had people talk to me about very personal stuff about Load and about Phoebe Bridgers is a big star now. Just did talk with Lars, this kind of like folky alternative singer.
Yeah.
And her entry was Saint Anger, and she's like, no, you don't understand like what this means to me. And it's it is a very different thing. And like people from like older eras can think like my thing was still the best, but it's it's something that we shouldn't be dismissive of. Is that like there are newer fans who come. I don't know if you ever watched that show, that Kids React show, where it's
some of it,
the YouTube channel. Yeah,
it's a YouTube channel where there'll be like Kids React to like Motley Crue or Kids React to Led Zeppelin, and there's a Metallica one, and like there are like 8-year-olds who hear like hardware songs like this is for me, and they just like it's and that might be the same way that we talked about like Battery or or Blackened or something like that, but it's
well, I'm sure that's why they still do it. I mean, they're still to this day they're almost 60 years old, and they're still like writing music that's gathering new fans. It's there's a 12-year-old singing the same song that a 60-year-old is singing. Because they there's such a wide range there of fans. So
James said that on the podcast. He's like, we'll play Master of Puppets live, and there'll be some 8-year-old in the crowd, and he's like, you like this? Why do you like this?
Yeah, that is amazing. They've definitely pretty clearly transcended that, where they go to some shows and I'm like, boy, they're all like dads here. I'm like, oh, I guess that's like our age now. There's like, that's but it's Metallica has like a young fan base, and it's it's stayed relevant in a really remarkable way.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So we are celebrating 30 years of the Black Album, and I wanted to ask you about where you were at the time when this came out and what your expectations were going into the album. Like, a lot of fans kind of abandoned Metallica after this because, as Tim kind of alluded to before, after 91, they sucked. Like, this was their sellout album or whatever. Obviously we don't feel that way, and I know you don't feel that way. But kind of going in, did you have certain expectations and what, were they met? Were they not met?
I didn't. And it's funny because I was, because my first Metallica record was Kill 'Em All, because that was the first one I found at a used store. And like I was a music nerd, I was obsessed with music, and like I knew that Metallica was like important and scary. I was interested in horror, and I was like really interested to hear about this thing. So I got Kill 'Em All, and I loved it. And I got Ride the Lightning because that was the next thing I found used. And it took some time for me to grow, but I was like, okay, this is changing the way I think about metal. And then I got the Black Album. So I kind of followed the trajectory of like older fans who got like the Age records and then heard the Black Album. And I love the Black Album, except I was also too young to understand why someone who liked Kill 'Em All would not like the Black Album.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'd not been introduced to this whole thing of like, you can't like my band. Like my band is too popular now.
Right.
So those are my first 3 records, Kill 'Em All, Ride Lightning, then the Black Album. And to me, they're all heavy, and they all had great lyrics, and they're all like catchy and fast, and all cathartic, and I love them very much. But I also didn't. And in hindsight, this made me think that more of the kind of the sort of anger about Metallica making the Black Album was more that they got big, because to me, they're like, these are all heavy, they're all great. Like, why wouldn't you like all 3 of these records? So it's it's like a younger fan who got that. I love the Black Album. So
that is probably true that a lot of people were pissed off that this is my band, this is the underground band, and there's so many fans that abandon ship once a band becomes big because like, oh, you just sold out. But to me, that never made sense. Like, I've always said that, and maybe this is me selling out, but I've always said, like, if you're getting into the music industry and you want your career to be playing music, I mean, isn't the goal to be, to write music and to have it,
make a living?
Yeah, have people respond to it positively, and the more people will respond to it positively, the more successful you're going to be. Like, that just made sense to me. So when I hear people like, no, man, you're supposed to stay in the underground and play the clubs, I don't get that. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like,
yeah, I also don't think that underground artists really think that. I think underground artists try to be, I think I've got I read a friend who saw Bruce Campbell from like the Evil Dead movies talking to him, and someone asked him like, what advice would you have for someone who wanted to be a B-movie star? And he was like, well, first off, like, why would you do that? And second off, you don't want to be B-movie star. You want to be an A-movie star. If you're lucky, you end up in Z movies. Like, I'm not here because I was trying to be a B-movie star. I'm here because I was trying to be like an Oscar-winning star, like in A-movies. And like, I got lucky. I ended up in like, the kind of underground cult following. I'm very thankful for that. But like, I don't think that you like get to that status by being like, oh, I'm going to be,
Right. You don't strive to be the B-movies.
Yeah. Or like with Metallica, I remember I saw the Chris Cornell tribute when he passed away with a lot of different bands playing his shows. And I remember Metallica played 2 songs from Ultra Mega OK, which is like the most like indie obscure Soundgarden. And the Melvins played like Soundgarden hits. The Melvins were playing like, like Spoon Man and stuff like that. And it's just like, I'm sure that, I think that they're like that. They have, come to my old place of work, but I think that they're like, happy with their like cult band status, but also like, we're not trying to be a cult band. We're trying to be like, huge. And things worked out where Metallica are this degree of popular, Melvins are this degree of popular. But I think that's true with cult bands.
Yeah. I mean, there was also an expectation. I mean, in '91, there was an expectation that the last album was Injustice for All.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where's the thrash? That's basically
that's what a lot of people were waiting for.
Where's Dyer's Eve? Where's Blackened? This album doesn't have that. Therefore, it sucks.
But like in hindsight, like, and I wonder if this offended more people that they kind of like, they showed that they could do it, but weren't entirely focusing on it. Where like, Holier Than Thou or The Struggle Within, like they have like thrashy songs on there.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if that's like more just offensive that they were like, we can do it. We're just choosing to do something else.
I think that was kind of a part of it because Lars deliberately didn't do a lot of double bass on the album. I mean, he didn't. I mean, there's almost none on the album.
Yeah, that's right.
He could have. You could have put double bass in Struggle Within. You could have put double bass in Holier Than Thou.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he didn't, and it's like, whoa, you guys suck now. Like,
yeah, right. Yeah.
I've always been. It's always been admirable for me that how they've approached their careers in each album, and just the fact that, and they've always said it, the fact that they write the music that they want to write. Like they're not writing music for, the masses to love. They write it, and if people love it, great. And we just talked about the Black Album on our last podcast, and I think Joe was like, it was actually a big risk for them to do this. I mean, this Black Album was a pretty big risk, really. I mean, it could have flopped, So
they had a comfortable career making thrash records. They were getting bigger and bigger. They were already big. They didn't need songs like Nothing Else Matters to be big. They really that was a big risk for them. And it's I also think that's part of its appeal to the fans, is that it is a risk and that pays off, and that it people admire people who take risks and don't think about the way they're perceived. And I think that's part of Black Album fans' appeal to it, as much as people who don't like it think that. But.
Yeah, I mean, even within the band, like Jason was surprised when he heard Lars playing the songs. He's like, "That's all you're gonna do? That's it? Just boom, bash, boom, bash." He's like that. But it worked, But it
didn't work.
He obviously expected something different. Even that's crazy to think a guy in the band was like,
"Oh yeah.
What are you doing, Lars?" But
well, I think, and Lars said even like one of our friends, Chris DiChiara, who's in a couple bands in the area, he mentioned on one of these posts about the fact that Lars pointed to Phil Rudd as like, I wanted to do more Phil Rudd, just AC/DC straight, 4/4 boom bash type stuff, and that just going for the groove. And I think Bob Rock had a big part of that too. He mentioned, my job was just to keep them in that pocket and just like keep the groove there. I didn't write the songs, I just helped them keep it.
Worked on tempos and
keep it tight, basically.
Yeah.
So
it does have that kind of fascinating connection to Back in Black, where they're both two of the highest selling records of all time, and both big like international breakthrough, and they both never released a greatest hit CD. They're both sort of like more album people and doing that, and it's
yeah.
You hear that with that. I mean, Laura said something about like I was listening to AC/DC every day while I was making the Black Album. It's just, I appreciate that. That's cool to do that.
Yeah,
when they do that often. They'll be inspired by what they're listening to and try to incorporate it into the album. I mean, they did that with Load, and it's a lot of blues stuff, and so now there's a bunch of Kirk's blues solos on Load and Reload, and
Yeah, so. And you hear that in the bands that cover in garaging too, where it's because Load and Reload are more kind of classic rock based, and they've got like on garaging they're doing like Blues Are Called and Thin Lizzy, and it's kind of hard rock influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they were listening to when they wrote Saint Anger, but
yeah, that's a good question. They all have kind of like conflicting things about that, but it's who knows?
Yeah, that album's all over the place.
Yeah, that sounds like a band that imploded.
Yeah,
it kind of had to.
Yeah, I mean,
it sounds like what it was. Yeah.
I think it's so valid because they kind of purged that record. They've all said in hindsight like that record was just a purge, is more of a purge than like a record, but it's I love how it's dedicated to, in the lineups, it's dedicated to Bob Rock and Phil Towle, who are two people they also purged with a record.
Yeah,
that's true. You got rid of Bob Rock, and it's
that is very true.
And that record is such a catharsis. It's just like getting everything out of us.
Yeah, I enjoy quite a bit of that album. People really, really hate it, but there's quite a bit that I like. There's some good songs on there.
Yeah, there are. They posted recently. They did a Frantic at one of their festival appearances. It sounded great. It was like so, and the crowd get charged with it. It was really, it's
Yeah, no, I don't hate the album. There's a few that I like on the album too, but
I mean, people hate it's the production. I think is the main issue.
Yeah, the Lars snare, that whole thing.
The Lars snare. I'm like, listen to the songs.
Gotta say too. Speaking of younger fans, I got a friend who's older. Guys, like I know a kid who's just like loves Metallica. It's like his one song that he's like obsessed with, and like this is the way that like you need to feel me. Like this one song, and like he's got some issues. Like this kid like need to hear the song. It's the Unnamed Feeling.
Oh, that's a great song.
I never would have picked out, but he's just like he's but like that's like a younger generation thing, where it's like it's like, and I was like, wow, that's a deep cut that guy really liked. Because like like younger fan, like if you want to understand me, you got to hear the Unnamed Feeling, and I'm like wow, that's powerful. But that's it's lasting. It's having an effect on younger people.
There's some really emotional vocals in that song, so that's not. I mean,
yeah,
it's a good song. I mean, that's one of the probably that and Shoot Me Again are probably my two favorites on that album. So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Those are both great. Yeah.
Yeah. It's there was a video for Unnamed Feeling too with like Edward Furlong and some other people. Who apparently like really nerded out about Metallica and
really
you understand. I'd met Arnold, had been like in the business for a while, but like meeting Metallica was just like my hero. So
I forgot about that video. I totally forgot there was a video for that song.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, I'd almost forgotten that too until doing the book and reviewing Metallica DVDs, like the videos 89 to 2004. So that's on that.
Yeah, you did a lot of research for this book, that's for sure, because you're digging some stuff.
Yeah,
like whoa.
Yeah, it's the library is really helpful. If you order stuff in there at a library loan, they'll just like send it to the store and you get there. So it was a big deal for me to get stuff that you couldn't find online. I said that in the pitch. I wanted to get stuff that I guess now my book is online, you can find it there, but I wanted I said I didn't want it to be a fact book. I wanted it to be stuff that you could I didn't want it to be stuff that you could look up online. Just want to be like something for you could explore again and find out more about. But.
Well, that's what we try to do on the podcast. Is like we don't want it to just be like a Wikipedia review of an album. We want it to be more personal, personal, more like this is our take, or this was this is what we were going through at the time when this came out, or think about what was going on in the world at the time. So really explore more than just like bits and pieces you find online. So that's cool. Yeah. That's really cool. Was there anything you were really surprised by doing this research? Like anything that you were like, holy crap, I didn't know that. That's pretty amazing.
A few things. A lot of stuff. I guess there are like little things, like I'd read like an old guitar player interview that'd be like the thing that should not be sounds like Cowboys from Hell. I'm like, maybe that's where that came from. And so there are like little things like that I'd read, or I guess seeing, I know James has a reputation for being kind of anti-theistic, and seeing how much he would use his sort of, and like with like, Leper Messiah and the God That Fails, and like reading more of his lyrics and seeing how much he uses his stuff from his religious upbringing to like convey his metaphors, and like he takes metaphors from like, religious texts, and that was kind of interesting to me. I guess I really took a liking to Kirk. I mean, like I always was kind of like, I like writing, I like James, and like, seeing how like cool Kirk is, it was really a big thing. But it's just just a there were surprises, just like seeing like what it means to so many different people, and seeing how everybody's Metallica is different, how something that's that big can there was a New York Times podcast, Caliphate, where they interviewed it was like going through Iraq during the Iraq War, and they had like their tour guide, who's this guy who's getting just like growing up with like bombs going off around him, like his friends are getting droned, his family's getting killed, his schoolmates are getting killed, and he just like loves Metallica and risks his life to buy their music. It's banned in Iraq. It's like, you don't understand, like this expresses me better than I can express myself. And just seeing how much it means to so many different people is a real awesome. I mean, just like knowing like you're never gonna know how much it means, and get like a glimpse of it, but just you see so many stories. So a lot of stuff was surprising for me.
Yeah, I almost feel like, I mean, there could be, or even James could write his own book. He's been, I mean, you think about his life. It's crazy what he's been through, like just from his childhood to, the crazy shit that's happened to him on stage, to his spirituality journey, to like, because he kind of abandoned religion for a long time, and I know he's kind of come back around on it in his own way. So it's just it's a very interesting journey he's had through his whole life, and it'll be really cool to hear from his perspective, like an autobiography type book.
I mean, I'd love to read a James book for sure. You mentioned coming back to spirituality. I think one thing that people, I'm surprised people didn't notice, is that he made a comment about, there's a French publication that asked him if he believed in God, and he said, well, I believe in a higher power, and people are like shocked, like, oh my God, it's horrifying. And that's also like, that's a big part of AA talks, is that, find your own higher power, and whether that's science or whether that's your spouse, or, and he,
right.
I think people didn't really look into that enough for him to, that's, he's mentioned in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame speech. He's one other weird thing about James too, finding out, is that people get really attached to him, and just finding out just how like there's this just like Kirk or Lars, but also just like the guys on Some Kind of Monster, or like Phil Towell, or like interviewers, people like, because I always thought of him as like cool, obviously, and like likable, but like there's a real attachment to James in like Metallica circles that people feel.
I wonder if that's why. I know he stopped doing the meet and greets so much. Probably. I don't know why that is, but
he said I think he said it was too much. It was like too intense. It was just messing with his head. That probably is part of it. Is like he was getting a lot of weird comments.
Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, he took some more time off for undisclosed reasons. So, I mean, that could have been mental health related. Who knows? So and it could have just been like too much.
It's probably exhausting too.
We can't. It's something we can't relate to, really. I mean, I can't relate to that. Like the fame aspect of it, just walking in your house and not being able to go anywhere. All that. It's got to be really frustrating. So.
Oh, totally. Did you guys watch that Rush documentary from a few years ago with is Beyond the Lighted Stage?
I have not seen that. No.
It's very good, but it's like, whether or not you like Rush, it's like a very good like depiction of like music and morale and stuff. But I remember they're talking about like the fan meet and greets, and then they have a few people in a row, like Tim from Rage Against the Machine, Jack Black, are all like, yeah, Neil Peart totally blew me off. Like, I don't know what happened. And then they interview Neil Peart, and he's like, look, like, I love our fans. I'm so happy to let me do what you want, but like, it makes me so uncomfortable. And I was like the world's biggest Who fan. I loved Keith Moon, and I never wanted to meet him. And I just like, I appreciate it. I respect it. Like, I'm so glad to like Getty and Alex like talking to the fans, but it makes me uncomfortable, and I can't do it. And it's just, you can say he's like a nice guy, and like, but he's not trying to like, be too cool for the fans, but just, it's not.
Well, people have preconceived notions about musicians. I mean,
totally.
really anyone who's famous, that they're just going to be, they have to be cool people, and they're going to be approachable all the time, and no, everyone has their own little things that they have to deal with, and they could be completely social awkward, but still be one of the best musicians ever. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, don't blame you for feeling like you need your time to yourself at all. That's it's really
right, exactly.
Yeah, that's why. Well, I mean, when we met Lars in '92, we chased his limo down. He was totally fine with it. I'm sure James would not have been as thrilled with that.
Yeah, he liked that. It's yeah, my friend Catherine helped me with course with Alice Cooper. Apparently he's like Lars, where he's totally like, he will, sign everything and just like will talk to everybody, and it's but I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer to that. It's not like you told your fans. It's like, no, I can see that being uncomfortable. Like, take your time for yourself. That's
yeah, I mean, James is more introverted, so it's probably just exhausting to have to have this constant, just constant.
Yeah, and you feel like his music is his expression. That's really where he gets expressive, and like Lars gives more interviews and talks more about what's going on. But I feel like James expresses himself more through music than through interviews and through talking.
Right.
Yeah.
One kind of fascinating interview I saw with James was that it was a Sirius XM interview with Jim Brewer, they mentioned in the book, where he was interviewing all the guys. And he asked them kind of like silly questions, but at one point he said, "Who is the most sensitive member of Metallica?" And three of the guys
saw this interview,
three of them said Kirk, and Kirk says James.
Yeah.
And James, like, you don't understand. Like, James's heart can wrap around this building. You don't understand how sensitive James is. And it's I think that feels very real to me. That like he could be like that.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, this obviously Metallica's gone through some different lineup changes a little bit. The Black Album features Jason, of course.
Right.
Any interesting tidbits on Jason that you pulled out through the research of this book, or anything that was?
Jason is probably my least favorite thing to talk about because I hate how mean they were to him. Like, I'll happily talk about it. Like, that's tough for me. Like, I'm obviously a diehard, and there's stuff like like Napster, like the lesser albums that like it doesn't affect the way I think about the good music at all. I hate how mean they were to Jason, and I like seeing how much they've changed with that. And you see them acknowledging that as soon as he left, and you see just like this year where Jason was doing the unboxing set of the Black Album. And, he seems super cool. He's like supporting them. He comes to their shows. He praises their albums. That's brutal that he was like their biggest fan. They invite him to this band and they like hazed him. And James is like talking to I had an interview in my book where James talked to the guys from Slipknot, and was saying like like if you need anything to talk about Paul Gray, like let me know, because like we didn't handle that well when we lost our guy. And I think it's a big part of their growth. I think that Jason, being the super fan he was, understood like leaving was a part of their growth,
right?
And that they need him to leave for them to thrive and be the great band that they are now and need to be again. But but I love Jason. Jason's he's a great performer. He covered Blackened, which is holy shit! Like, what an incredible song! Like Blackened, like like to get Metallica Blackened. That's like that's immortality. That's so good. But it's
it's crazy to hear those bass lines. Like, you hear the outtakes on the box set Black Album. It's like he's basically playing the guitar riff on bass. It's like, holy crap, that's pretty awesome. And he's showing James like, no, it goes like this. Like, Jason actually, can you imagine that? Like, you grew up listening to this band, and now you're showing, James Hetfield how to play a riff, and this is going to be on the next album.
That's insane.
Super talented. They could not have gotten a better bassist. He's as we're in Flotsam and Jetsam, he's kind of like the Lars of that band, where he's like the business guy, the go-getter. He's very he's an incredibly gifted musician. He's very loyal. He's a great performer. You see him, he's just like jumps around on stage, and the other guys say that too. They're like, dude, you got to watch Jason on stage. He's like, that's where he shines. I mean, he's just
well, I think he rocked so hard that he injured himself, right? Like, he can't.
That's right. A few times. Yeah.
So like, he's definitely.
And he's just like a real artist. That it's painful, but that time when they're leaving, he's just like, you don't understand. Like, I have to release this music. Like the same way that like you have kids and like you can take care of kids. Like, I don't have kids. Like, I dedicated my life to music, and he's just like, this is like my child to me. The way that like your children. I mean, he's such an artist, and I have so much admiration for Jason. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, you
agree.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I met him in '92, and he was super cool then. I know, Tim, you've met him a couple times, right? Like
I met him like 4 times.
Oh wow!
Because there was this weird thing in the early days of the fan club in like the mid '90s. If you went to the show and you had like, oh well, I've been to the fan club since '93. They're like, okay, because it had these weird things with like, okay, if you line up here, you might get a backstage pass, and then if I had like the gold Metallica club.
Oh yeah,
card, and they're like, okay, well, you're in for sure. I'm like, all right, cool. And it was almost always, it was always Jason who showed up for these meet and greets. It was just Jason. The rest of them wouldn't show up. So that happened. I think that happened 3 times where I did that fan club thing. Like, okay, you can meet him, and it was always Jason, and he was always super cool.
Yeah,
super nice. I mean,
Yeah, James called him the never-ending connection with the fans. He's like, he'll sign every last thing. He's very he's very fan-based, and it's and he's spoken about this. Like, my role in the group is the connection with the fans, and he's so good with that. Even though he's also just like, he's a great musician, he's a great performer, he's a great businessman. There's that scene in A Day in the Life, in a year in a half in the life of Metallica, where he's taking home the catering to his hotel room, and they call him a cheapskate. He's like, yeah, we'll see who's laughing last. He's like, no, I'm gearing up for the long run. He's so like business smart too, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm not wasting my money on room service. He's like, I'm gearing up. Yeah.
This is I got plans for that money, and it ain't for fucking sandwiches. That was something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's a memorable scene now.
Yeah.
Well, are you working on anything right now? Do you have plans for another book?
I am. Yes, I'm working for the 33 1/3 series right now, which is short books and albums. I'm writing the first ever book about body counts, which is
oh my gosh,
yeah,
nice.
Well, yeah. So that's been fun to research. It'll be out in 2023 apparently. So
okay.
Yeah, it's been insane. It's never been that's something I learned through Kyle. Actually, was body count. It's been I guess just seeing in the last few years, like how the different movements, like Black Lives Matter and Afropunk, and thinking like okay, like cool, I see people speaking about this, but like why isn't it talking about body count? So I'll be writing about that, and there are sort of and there are innovations. I mean, this was way before the new metal era. This is before rap rock. This is before it's
oh yeah.
So yeah, there's
before,
a lot of body counts.
92, right? The first body count.
92, yeah.
So that was way before all the rap rock blew up. They took a big break though. They were like 92 and then nothing for like 30 years.
Yeah, right. There was nothing. This is like the Rage debut didn't go platinum until 2 years later. It's just so working on that right now, and going through interviews and seeing his the whole history of Ice-T, and just like how he's become like a different, went from being like censored by the president and stuff like that to being like this beloved TV star on,
I know.
Right. I know, that's
it cracks
weird.
me up. Like my mother-in-law is like, oh, I like Ice-T.
Yeah, exactly. He's like,
do you know Ice-T really is?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then he's going up singing Cop Killer, like
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
singing Cop Killer, and then he's a cop on TV. Like, what are you doing?
I know.
So yeah, working on that, and I guess there was like police boycotts about their tours when they would open for Metallica and Guns N' Roses, and he'd read the boycott letters on stage, so writing about that, and it's so working on that now, and it still feels like there's work to do in Metallica too. There's like I'm doing the Morbid NAMI class again about the Black Album in December, and it's just there's so much to do.
Yeah, how does the class work? Like, what is the
I mean, it was like a PowerPoint presentation where I, just presented points on the Black Album and why it's important and why it's, that felt like like the one to talk about because there's so much room for argument and interpretation. Like it's so hard, and I worked to do this in the book, but it's so hard to write about something that's like like what do you say about Ride the Lightning other than this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
That's hard. I mean, like the Black Album has so many angles, so many controversies. So I picked that one to teach a class about, so I could explore all those kind of angles. And as I was mentioning earlier, that was a big part of me getting to write a book, where I just had to okay, like what do I think about this, and what do other people think about this, and then put that down on paper and get that into something.
No, I would argue it's their most talked about album, I wouldn't say controversial, but just like, as far from a fan standpoint, just kind of all over the map. Like you can have someone who's like, this is the best album ever, and then someone who's like, this is where Metallica started sucking. So
yeah,
it's like
it's the fork in the road where it's like, okay, these guys are going to actually start doing things a little bit, differently, and you're either on board or you're not on board. You know.
And also, like outside of like dedicated metalhead circles, it's amazing how many people are like, that's like their thing. I mean, like as like a dedicated metalhead, I love the Black Album, but like I'll talk to people like, not a general person, but like, oh my god, I used to work at this job. We play the Black Album every day, and just like they're just like they. It's such a connection for so many people, and just or like Lana was talking on the Black Album podcast about just like that was one of my friends were like I'm more into like pop and R&B, but like hearing this now I like Metallica, and just then they cast this wide net and sort of like had this thing that. And she writes in the book like their political act was making metal something that so many more people could enjoy than previously, and that's something that so many people could appreciate, and that's a big part of the Black Album crowd. And listening to the Blacklist and hearing how people interpret it differently, I love
that's super cool actually.
Super cool, yeah.
And the podcast, the probably the coolest thing to me about that podcast is listening to all the different artists talk about how. Like they were, in like wherever, like, Chile or something, and they're hearing the Black Album and they're, this is life altering for me. And then you hear the song and it's like this weird, like, not even metal at all, but it's a really cool interpretation. And that's really cool. That's like, you don't think about that stuff when you're listening to metal, like how this is touching other people from all different walks of life, all different genres of music. It's crazy.
Definitely.
And there's not a lot of metal bands you could say that to do that. No. Like how many metal bands can you say, they reached this R&B artist from Africa that now wants to do this interpretation, Holy One Now or something. It's crazy. Like, no one's gonna say, like I love Slipknot, but then you're not going to hear probably not going to hear a Slipknot podcast.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Nobody to that extent. Yeah, nobody like Metallica in that regard. And I feel like there's so much like mixtape value in the Blacklist record where like I feel like for years the same way people are like what's your one disc load and reload? If you put it all in one disc, like how'd you make it? Or like I feel like there's gonna be so much like make a Blacklist album of only like the 12 songs and like do that. And I think there's so much that
I haven't even finished the thing yet. It's so long.
It's so long, right? Yeah.
It's like
there's so much you can do with it. So many people are gonna like. I like this version of Nothing Else Matters more. This version of Holier Than Thou more. It's there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And only one of them did a Wolf and Man. There's only one version of Wolf and Man on there.
Only one of Wolf and Man, and only one Struggle Within.
Yeah.
Too. So I'm talking on other podcasts earlier this week about how Nothing Else Matters at this point a little bit like Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen for them, where like everybody does a version. People assume like it's easy to play and I can sing better than James. They do it. Nobody embodies it the way that he does. But it's we hear there's like Shakira does it and Macy Gray does it and Beth Naked does it and Phoebe Bridgers and Dave Gahan does it and Darius Rucker does it and just like
I know.
Everybody's like, I can try that. Like, it's but he doesn't. Metallica does it in a special way.
That's got to be crazy for James, considering that's like a song that nearly didn't even make the album, and it's just this like personal song he was doodling with, and like Lars happened to hear, and all of a sudden, and it's on the album now, and now it's probably like their second biggest song behind Enter Sandman. So
did you see recently they were on Howard Stern and Elton John talked about that song?
Yeah,
yes,
crazy. Elton John saying like
it's like
it's just like
that's unbelievable to watch. Yeah.
It's got to be mind blowing. I mean, as Lars said, that's a mind fuck, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's got to be like
what? So many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one people reach out to. It's just like Metallica. You know, the song "Nothing Else Matters." Like I'm just like, that's a great song. But it reaches so much far beyond metal. It's really, it's great.
Yeah, very good.
And that's a live version that Kirk does the solo on. But I go ahead. You're saying.
I was going to ask where people can find. I mean, obviously, Amazon.com. You can find your book. Do you have a website? Do you want to promote?
Amazon, bookshop.org. I guess Roman is the Roman and Backbeat are the publishers. Bookshop.org. You'll support your local indie bookstore. But however you get the book is fine.
Awesome.
I got mine on Kindle So
oh, great.
I guess it's Amazon. Because I read on my phone all the time. Like, I'm just gonna get it on my phone and.
Nice.
It's convenient, right? I was kind of against that, and then like I started being like, I can do this while I'm in line, and like it's so good to have a book on your phone. It's so nice.
I know. I used to be like, had the book light and everything with the proper book and I was like,
it's convenient. I approve. I'm like cool with Kindles. Okay. But yeah, get it how you can, and thanks for the support.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. It was awesome. Obviously Metallica is me and Tim's favorite band, so this subject's going to come up many more times in the future. So if you ever want to come back on, you're always welcome.
I will talk about it anytime. I seriously, happy to talk about it anytime. And
very cool.
They're my guys. So
yeah, it's funny how that works. Like they're just like they're guys. Like that's the band that I picked, and that's I'm Metallica. That's
funny how something that big can do that, and like it still feels so personal to so many people, and like consistently, where you're just like
absolutely,
no matter how big.
We said it last night. We did a podcast. Was it Friday night? Yeah, Friday night. About the Black Album, and I said the band I look the most forward to releasing new music is Metallica, and
always,
Eric and Joe just were like, well, yeah, and then Keith is the other guy on the podcast. He made this face like, really?
Oh no!
Well, we have Keith on for that reason. Keith is like, he's like the antagonist, the guy who's like,
it's an event. Well,
I mean, who's going to listen to a podcast where everyone's just always agreeing with each other?
Exactly.
So it's good to have his point of view, and it's look. And I said this on the podcast the other night. I get if you're into like hardcore metal. Oh yeah. I'm not opposed if you don't like the Black. I get it. Like I understand it. If Metallica was like one of your favorite bands, but it was one of your favorite thrash bands, and all of a sudden they release this, I understand that. But for me, it was just, part of the evolution of the band, and love it.
So. One thing I'll add about that is that one thing that really inspired me to write the book was I read something Rob Sheffield, the music critic, wrote, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he basically said that, for years, bands have stylized themselves as like more badass than the Beatles. Like we're Led Zeppelin, we're the Stones, we're the Sex Pistols, we're tougher than the Beatles, we're meaner than the Beatles, we're like more hardcore than the Beatles. Yeah. But nobody pisses people off as much as the Beatles do. And that's kind of how I feel about Metallica, where for years their bands like, we're Slayer, we're Pantera, we're death metal, we're black metal, we're Megadeth, we're heavier than Metallica, we're cooler, we're meaner, we're tougher, but like nobody offends people as much as Metallica does, and nobody feels as much. And like, you talk about new albums and people like, that's what you're looking forward to, like you were saying earlier with it's just they like they connect to some people, but they also offend so many people, and they're so more than I have a mentor friend who worked on the third book about Slayer, and he's like, I was so I would need to go to therapy to talk about how much the Black Album like offended me. And I'm just like, right. Like in Europe, it's like that's so cool. Like how awesome is that? Like in Slayer fans, like the taking pride in offensive music, but like that's like what offends Slayer fans is Metallica. And,
well, you can't say it didn't have an impact on them, right?
Yeah, exactly. It has an impact, and like it's it connects to people, and it gives you feelings and emotions. I love that Metallica does that.
Yeah, I think it's that they loved it so much, the thrash stuff. They loved it so much. There was an equal and opposite reaction. They're like, I love this so much, and you have betrayed me.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I hate you forever for this. And it's like this equal opposite, just like, I hate you forever now. You have betrayed me and never again.
It's such a betrayal that they can't go back to. I mean, I have friends who will not listen to anything after the Black Album. They refuse. They're like, nope.
Oh, wow.
Not doing it. Like, I can't do it.
You should check out Death Magnetic. No.
Right.
No,
try it. They went back to thrash. You might like it. Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
That's part of the appeal, is that they try new things, they offend people, they they keep getting up and getting back, and that's I think it's part of the appeal that you don't know what you're getting from Metallica. Hardwired is totally different from Lulu, totally different from Death Magnetic, totally different from Saint Anger, totally different from S&M and Garage. It's totally different every time. I love that there's a surprise, and I think that's and yet just anticipation is so great. So I love that they do that.
Definitely.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just appreciating the music for the music and not for what you wanted it to be. Just
exactly. Yeah.
Listen to the music. Do you like it or not? It doesn't matter who wrote it. is this a good song or not? And then people are like, well, it's a good song, but it's not a good Metallica song. And you're like,
oh, come on.
That's not.
Yeah.
What?
I think half the time people go in with expectations, and that's what, sometimes you may say you don't like the movie or you don't like the album, but it's because of the expectations you put in your own head. Like,
yeah,
I have these expectations, this is going to be the best thing ever, and even if it's good, you're still like, nah, because it wasn't
what I wanted.
Yeah, it didn't blow my mind. Like, people got to lower their expectations sometimes. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, Metallica, they give you their honest selves. They don't, give you what you're looking for. They don't they're not
right.
For a band that is one of the biggest cultural institutions of the world. They are not crowd pleasers. They're not there to they're there to be themselves. I think that's part of what's inspiring about them.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's an argument you go online and look at the comments section. I don't even really do it anymore because it's just so frustrating. Because it's just like,
you can't.
I mean, you're just like, you just don't get it. Like these comments, and you're like, oh no.
I stopped arguing with those people a long time ago.
I know. There's no point.
It's like talking to a brick wall.
Yeah. You read the comments and you're like, oh man, you do not understand.
Yeah, I don't bother. I'm just like,
yeah,
it's out. Feel my thing about the book, and then don't bother the comments.
I mean, you mentioned in the book about if Lars's name comes up on social media, it's usually met with just I guess a wave of hate.
People are so pissy about Lars in particular. Yeah, it's I say in the book he's the one member of Metallica that people hate. People really get angry about Lars, but it's
and you're right, and you're right too that it's mostly about ever since Napster.
Yep.
That was the turning point.
But it's funny how little younger generations care about my partner's not a big music person as I am. Was I was talking about Metallica book and Metallica, and then she goes, "Wait a minute, they sued Napster."
Oh wow!
It's so not a big deal these days. For
well, it was 23 years ago or whatever, right? Or 22.
Yeah, 20 years ago. People who grew up not buying CDs and not seeing the difference between streaming and buying CDs don't really care about the difference. And I think that's I think it's an our generation of fans thing, but I think there's a big portion of the world that cares less and less about Metallica suing Napster. And also you see how younger artists, in my book I quote guys from Mastodon, from the Misfits, who are look, you don't understand, he wasn't doing it for them, he's doing it for us.
Yeah,
Lars has the money. He doesn't they lost more money paying for lawyers, than they did from streaming. That was the more they took a hit just by going after this. But you don't understand, we don't make money from music anymore, and that's a bad thing. But
right.
So yeah, it was inevitably going that way at this point, it seems. But morally, I think they're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
We said that. We talked about that on the podcast because it comes up every now and then. And it's the argument was correct. The approach might have been wrong, but the argument was correct.
Right.
Yeah, it might not have been worth pursuing, but it's. But I think that you see these days when people applaud, Neil Young or Prince or Taylor Swift, who take their music off streaming sources, great, sticking up for the artist. And in the year 2000, when the music sales industry was at its peak, people couldn't see that, or just this is never going to go away. But it's But now I think people will celebrate that. I bet that, more and more people are going to, stick up for Metallica for that part of their career.
Yeah. Well, and people often say they're greedy because of that or for other reasons, but they don't realize how much money they lose on a lot of things. I mean, they lost money when they did the second Orion tour. The movie didn't pan out the way they expected. Through the Never, I think they lost money on that because the stage show was ridiculous. All the proceeds from this Blackened album or Blacklist album are all going to charity. They're not making any money off that. So these are things that people don't know, and they just see little examples of Lars trying to take money. Right, or whatever. And they're like, no, dude, you don't get it. Let me enlighten you.
My friend Kath was saying apparently they're losing money on the podcast too, on the
oh really
podcast, where they pay to get all these people to have their thing, but they I think it's clearly not them in it for the money for them.
Well, that's an example of where they were definitely more in it for the art, hearing, and they've said this multiple times on the podcast, but hearing other interpretations of what other people are doing with their music is what they were really most interested in with that Blacklist thing. They weren't
Totally
interested in the money. They were just excited to hear or to even find out that 53 different artists wanted to do interpretations of the music.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's pretty crazy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we'll let you go, but again, thank you very much for your time, and
thank you.
I'm looking forward to digging in. I just got the book. I'm looking forward to digging into it myself. So
enjoy.
And everyone out there, go buy it. If you're a Metallica fan, I'm sure you'll love it. And
thank you.
Definitely.
We'll hope to have you on again, Ben. Appreciate it, man.
I will talk about Metallica anytime.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much.
Very cool.
Fun.
All right, man.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Energy, aggression, power. To sum it up, it's a vulgar display of power.
Heavy metal speaks to the anger and despair of teenagers today, the same way that the blues used to speak to the despair and anger of the South.
Cutting up.
Cutting it up big time.
Some cunt's recording this.